It's the longest and mightiest of the world's rivers, flowing through the planet's largest tropical rainforest. But the colossal Amazon basin is under siege in ways that could alter the face of the planet, making it the scene of one of the most important human adventures imaginable. Join Jean-Michel Cousteau and his team as they rediscover the Amazon of today, from the Andes to the sea. It's Jean-Michel Cousteau, Ocean Adventures.
Spanning 200 miles at its entrance, the Amazon is the widest river in the world. Some of its flat channels are perfect for the phenomenon known by local people as the Big Roar, the Pororoco. Pulled by the moon's powerful tides, the sea overpowers the river and charges upstream in a crashing series of waves called a tidal bore. This invasion by the sea finally dissipates 500 miles upriver. In wave after wave, the Pororoco pours in up to 16 miles an hour in a wall of water that can reach 20 feet high. This is the scale of the Amazon, in the grandeur and enormity of what is at risk as change accelerates. For months, Jean-Michel Cousteau, joined by his son Fabien and daughter Céline, and the Ocean Futures team have explored this vast region on a mission to find and understand the issues threatening the rainforest basin, as well as possible solutions. Their expedition has taken them to the cities of Manaus and Santarém, to the heavily deforested states of Mato Grosso and Rondônia, to the protected reserves Xixua and Mameroa, and as far west as Peru, all connected by the Amazon, a river so mighty that for its entire 4,200-mile course, not a single bridge crosses it. Ahead, they face the rains and floods of the wet season, and expeditions deep into the rainforest, where they will be among the people who could hold the key to the Amazon's future, where they will encounter the countless plant and animal species that have flourished here over millions of years. Of the rich biodiversity found here, perhaps no animal is more an icon of the Amazon than the pink river dolphin, or boto. Its vivid pink color, a display of the male's maturity, something to show off, like antlers on a deer. Largest of the river dolphins, they are protected by law, but it's the mythology that surrounds them that has been their greatest protection.
Dolphins are part of the culture, the folklore of the Amazonian people, but at the same time always with lots of legends and more supernatural stories. Like the famous one is the dolphin that can transform themselves in a handsome man or a beautiful woman as well to enchant the person. People truly believe that the child can be the child of a boto, and the community usually takes care of this child because it's a child that it's the father, it's the boto.
Oh, at least 24 dolphins all around us. I think a lot of people would expect, just as with my knowledge and my background, to be pretty comfortable in the water with any marine life. And to be honest, my first reaction was I was really scared. The fact that these are wild animals, very sharp teeth. Here I am venturing into their aquatic realm, and I know they could easily bite me. All they want is a free meal, and if I don't have that, you wonder if they get aggressive. And then after a while, I really relaxed, and I really wonder if they feel that I had relaxed. At one time, one dolphin came right up, both pecks. I mean, this sounds a little lovey-dovey, but honestly, almost grabbing me right here, and his eye-to-eye contact was just absolutely spectacular.
In most of the Amazon, the boto remain abundant, a living symbol that people do protect what they love.
Wow.
But not everyone is charmed by these animals. Scientists in a protected reserve monitoring a population of about 500 dolphins recently discovered that fishermen use dolphin meat as bait for catfish, and the dolphins' numbers have declined 10% in 5 years. This finding supports the reality that the Amazon is now in an era where monitoring, counting, and protection are increasingly necessary. This is especially true for another of the Amazon's icons, the pirarucu. Listed as endangered in 1996, the pirarucu came back from the brink when scientists discovered that local fishermen were as skilled as researchers in counting fish, so a management plan could be implemented. A quota was set at 30% of the fish population for the short fishing season, a few weeks at the driest of the dry season, when the river is at its lowest, and only allowed in specific protected reserves. But the dry season in the Amazon still means rain, and the film team has to wait it out at the monitoring station where each pirarucu caught for sale must be brought. Eventually, the weather clears, and cameraman Matt Ferraro works upriver with a group of local fishermen.
How'd it go, Matt? They were catching lots of fish, some big fish, but they were fishing totally different than the way we saw before. Instead of penning off a channel, they're actually penning off floating grass towards shore, and then they would push their canoes into the grass and harpoon the fish through the grass.
The average pirarucu is 6 feet long and 200 pounds. The biggest are 10 feet, 400 pounds. They've evolved to breathe air and must surface every 15 minutes for a breath, making them easy to count and to catch.
The fish would swim out into the net, and then they would just drag up the net and pull the fish into the boat.
And these are pretty big fish, right?
Yeah, really
How many
big.
people pull them up?
Oh, just one guy.
Really?
Just one guy. Yeah,
Wow.
one of the guys actually got knocked into the water by one of the fish. It thrashed and hit the boat, and he just fell right in the water. And he's the best one, apparently.
Was he okay?
Yeah, but everybody laughed at him.
Yeah.
A vital food source for thousands of years to local people, the pirarucu has been the target of a commercial fishery for over 200 years. But when its numbers seriously declined, threatening the species, IBAMA, the Brazilian Ministry of the Environment's enforcement agency, called for strict management and monitoring of every fish. Theoretically, every pirarucu is measured, weighed, and marked with a tag to prove where it was caught and will count as part of the quota. A red tag proves it's a fish from Mamerewa Reserve. For biologists Richard Murphy and Fabienne, it's a rare catch and an opportunity to inspect the biology of one of the Amazon's most unusual fishes. The waters of the Amazon region contain 20% of all the freshwater resources in the world. There's even a market for the enormous scales of the pirarucu, which, when dried, are strong and abrasive enough to be used as a file. The waste becomes food to these piranha, which are very aggressive in the diminished waters of the dry season. The Cousteau team moves on. To test the tagging system, Murphy goes to the Manaus fish market, where most of the pirarucu caught in Mamerewa are shipped.
De Mamerewa. De Mamerewa, el laque es vermelho. Okay, that's very interesting. So he's not really sure which reserve this is from. We know it should be red if it's from Mamerewa. So maybe it's from another reserve, and he just doesn't really have knowledge as to which one it's from. Of course, we know the tags can be taken off and inserted in other fish, so why don't we go elsewhere? Pirarucu. Ah, okay. We're getting a little closer. What I think we need to do is contact our pals at Mamerewa, look on their records, and see if this was any of the fish, was from one of the fish that we saw caught, or when it was caught. For all we know, it could have been caught last year and just put on another fish. I was in the market on November 20th.
Esse peixe foi capturado na reserva Mamerewa.
Can you tell me when the fish was caught?
Esse peixe foi pescado no dia 31 de outubro.
October 31st.
In this instance, the system worked, which is encouraging, since the illegal fishery continues in many areas. But a system is in place, and there is hope to preserve this valuable fish. The team prepares for the second major expedition, a 1,200-mile journey east to Manaus during the wet season, leaving all modern civilization behind.
Some of the areas we're going to be going to are very, very remote, and there are no fuel stations along the river. So now we have to figure out ways to carry enough fuel to get all the way up into these remote areas and come back.
All right, we're all set.
So anyways, I got to get this engines going on this ship so we can head downriver. Why does it take so long to start engines on a boat? I don't understand that.
Weeks of investigation lie ahead, with many excursions planned, but with time in reserve for the unexpected. Crossing into Brazil at Tabatinga, Fabian and Celine prepare to lead a small group on a special assignment.
We sent a small team on a mission into the southern region. That huge region encompasses many Indians who have had no or very little connection with our Western world. And the whole objective was to witness the gathering of 6 tribes and for them to address issues having to do with the environment, having to do with health, basically having to do with how to deal with the pressure that they're getting from the outside world while they want to be able to manage their own environment in a sustainable way.
The team continues down the Itui River for another day, deep into the Vale do Javari Indigenous Reserve. Created by the Brazilian government in the late 90s, the reserve protects more than 30,000 square miles for indigenous tribes. No outsiders may enter without permits. However, illegal loggers, fishermen, and hunters invade this area, and the possibility of federal road construction through the reserve remains an issue.
Well, I think the topic that's most important from my perspective is how are we as humans going to manage this ecosystem? And it's becoming somewhat obvious to me that it's going to be done by the natives or not at all. Of course, the bad news is the native populations are going under. You know, between the diseases and other impacts from the outside, they're really in trouble.
The violent land grab for cattle, lumber, gold, and oil, combined with the effects of diseases like malaria and hepatitis, which remain widely untreated, have devastated indigenous people. These are among the critical issues at the meeting the team has come to witness. The Marubo tribe hosts this year's conference at Rio Novo, more than 300 miles from any city.
Vocês são meus convidados.
Well, you are my guest, my people's guest to the conference. We are proud to bring you here.
Então vocês estão sendo bem-vindos.
You are welcome in our village, and you can film and be comfortable. It is your place too.
But 3 of the 5 tribes present are not pleased, resulting in a tense debate inside the schoolhouse that lasts an hour. The team is allowed to stay. It's custom for village guests to stay in the homes of residents, but with so many attending the conference, there's no room for the team. They're allowed to pitch their tents, which would normally be inappropriate.
Here in the Valley de Javari, we created this organization, Savaja. It was founded in 1991. Its objective is to unite the indigenous people, to fight for the rights of the indigenous people, land rights, rights to natural resources, to preserve our culture, and to live in peace.
Can you tell me what are some of the greatest cultural concerns that you have?
The young people are losing the culture, the teachings of the Page, traditional medicine, Our worry is that we were massacred by others, and our culture was almost lost. We are trying to recapture the culture we once had. We have gone from one family to 45 families already. We lived in the forest, everything tranquil. It was good. Nowadays, we have lots of disease, and a lot of people are dying, hepatitis and malaria. In the whole Valley de Javari, we have around 3,549 indigenous people, but 80% have been contaminated by hepatitis A, B, C, and D. A child cannot be treated well. They get it over and over. Only a few nurses come around. Rarely medicine.
Can you tell me about the environmental issues?
The way that logging is going, the forest can be gone. This is happening in many places, cutting down the trees. We don't cut them all down. They have spirits. We walk here free, without anyone bothering us. So that is why the forest is important. It protects our hunt, fishing, and protects animals. The forest is our father that takes care of people.
What do you need from the outside world, outside of the Javari Valley?
They should help the indigenous people of the Valley de Javari. Serious health problems. We think the world does not know what is happening here. Well, we see that in the white world, we see in television, there are lots of good things, but this is much better.
Na região nós estamos vivendo uma área rica. Nós sabemos proteger a nossa
In this region, we see richness. We know how to use it.
Mas nós queremos apoio. Pedimos que
But we ask for support.
federal para orientar, para poder incentivar.
We ask the government to provide incentives
Território dos povos
to solve the issues of demarcation that is not being followed by law, the education that is not being implemented,
que está uma situação crítica.
the health system that is critical with respect to indigenous peoples, and the environment that is not protected. There is no one overseeing it from Obama or the government. So we are in a critical situation.
The Amazon is home to 700,000 indigenous people, still dependent on the forest and sustaining it. The team's presence focuses attention on the Valley do Javari, hopefully bringing solutions, but also places them in a complicated and age-old dilemma.
All of us left with a feeling really that we barely scratched the surface. We had a tremendous, amazing opportunity being a part of that conference, but in the end we were observers and not participants, and that is just a harsh reality. We will always be outsiders.
Well, the team is unbelievably frustrated. They had to cut their trip short because the generator never worked, and the batteries for the cameras, of course, ultimately gave in. It's an experience they'll never forget. In the meantime, while you're going through it, it's not easy. It's kind of tough, but that's how you learn, and that's something you'll never forget.
There's a lot of rewards, but there's a lot of hard work to get the job done. Because everybody keeps saying, you know, we're lucky, we got a great job. Well, on the other hand, moving all the equipment. There's a ton of equipment that's needed to do production, and that equipment has to be moved sometimes many times during the day, let alone the whole expedition. And whether it's raining out, whether it's hot out, humidity is high, it still has to be moved.
But on a good day, the hours of lugging equipment in the most remote locations turn into brief moments of magic in one of the Amazon's limitless micro-habitats. The divers become only a handful of people to experience a pond of clear water where time and evolution conspire undisturbed to add to the Amazon's pulsating vitality.
I probably could have done something else and made more money, but it's all said and done. When my time is over, I'm going to be a happy man. I've had a lot of great adventures with all the crew members, and it's really a rewarding experience that I couldn't have gotten anyplace else, and neither can they.
Yesterday was probably the best day I had here on this leg of the trip. We were out in the semi-flooded forest. It was absolutely magic. The sun was shining on the deep and rich green trees and leaves. Yeah, it's a good place to be.
On est privé, nous plongeurs, on a l'habitude de l'eau claire et des poissons. Et là, on sait qu'ils y sont, mais on ne peut pas les voir. C'est quand même un des lieux où on a vu de nos yeux le plus de poissons. Voilà la différence en 25 ans. Mais alors, ce qui m'a bien sûr tout de suite intéressé, c'est que je n'ai pas retrouvé le pêcheur à l'épervier, je n'ai pas retrouvé le pêcheur à l'arc ou à la lance, j'ai trouvé des bateaux avec des grands filets.
Et de voir que, bon, peut-être la grosse différence, c'est qu'ils amènent le poisson à Manaus, alors qu'avant, ils le consommaient localement. So there's been a time where the local population was living in harmony with nature. Then Europeans showed up and they started exporting out of the Amazon, obviously at the expense of the local people. So much so that now they have to import subsistence material.
They are eating bread made with grains from the United States and rice from Vietnam and tuna from the ocean. And
Tuna?
Yeah, tuna fish.
So they're bringing in ocean fish to the Amazon.
It's incredible. In the flooded area is worse the situation because the biggest animals in the flooded forest like manatees, giant turtles are almost extinct. When they are lacking, the vegetation extracts all the nutrients from the water and prevent the light to come into the water and prevent the oxygen to interchange with the water. So the fishes don't have food and the fishes can breathe. If they cover all the surface of the lakes, it's bad, it's very bad news. The people says actually, when see one of these lakes covered by the floating vegetation, they call dead lakes.
Really?
Because they are devoid, empty of fishes. From the air, you can appreciate a kind of healthy forest, but inside the forest has a lot of problems. We say that the Amazon is a kind of organism. If you don't keep the whole Amazon working, functioning as an ecosystem, the Amazon will be gone. You can't preserve the Amazon by patches. Most of the trees depend of animals for disperse the seeds. So when there is no animals to eat the flesh and disperse the seeds to other ways, to other places, the seeds fall from the tree and rot in the floor of the forest.
And there's none left.
Most of the big animals are now gone, most of them.
For hundreds of years, Amazon animals have been traded for private collections, the fashion industry, and as exotic pets. This illegal trafficking of animals and plants is now the third most profitable trade on the worldwide black market after guns and drugs. From Brazil alone, every year, 38 million animals are taken. During the expedition, Fabian and Céline are approached to buy this young Margay cat. How the owner says he acquired the cat, which prefers remote sections of the forest, arouses suspicion.
If I go to the market and I see a live animal and I really feel sorry for that animal, what do I do?
Feel really sorry and let it die. I think it's the best, because what I see here with tourism is that illegal trade gets worse sometimes with tourists, because they come here, they go to the market in Belen and they see those baby monkeys sold and with a string around their neck, and they, oh, poor monkey, and buy it. They are supporting the market. And you can see more animals now sold than it was 20 years ago. I think they should, if they want to keep the Amazon alive, they should do their part too. They should come and should, appreciate, but not try to buy animals.
In this case, government officials are notified, seize the margay, and entrusted to the Cousteau team for release.
Somebody stole that creature from the jungle. We're going to take it back to the Indians because they know how to handle those, and they're going to put it back in the rainforest, and hopefully it'll be okay.
The team delivers the margay to members of the Métis tribe, whose culture reveres large cat species.
Can you explain that we confiscated this cat from a man in Atalaya, and that we would like to know if there's somebody here that would be willing to take care of him and rehabilitate him to put him back out in the wild?
Vai? Pega. Pega? Pode pegar?
Celine removes the collar in a symbolic gesture.
Tell him this means he's free.
Para deixar ele livre.
With the margay safely delivered, Celine and Fabienne say a difficult goodbye.
For me, the most important thing that happened in my life was to learn about forest. 80% of everything I know about forest, you cannot find in books. You know, you gotta live there in the forest. When you grew up in the countryside, the most of the people think that you're stupid, that you don't know anything about their world. But it's funny because when you grew up in the forest, you go to the city, you learn very quick everything about city. But the people from city, when they go to the jungle, they don't know anything, and it takes many years for them to learn.
Now, you grew up in your village, which is, what, 2.5 hours away from here?
Yes, about that.
And when you were a little kid, you had never had a chance to come to Manaus?
Few times. For the first time I came to Manaus, I've seen something that people were calling aquarium. I made that my hobby first, but then from hobby it turned into my main profession. I didn't know very much about technical stuff, but I knew how to find the fish, and I knew where to find the fish and how to catch it.
Right. Now, you're going to sell this?
Yeah, this one, people pay a lot of money for this kind of fish.
How much are you going to get?
This species can be like $10.
Wow. What really makes this fish so special?
The most of the expensive fish, they're rare. You know, it's hard to find them. And sometimes I have to travel like a week by boat or 2 hours by plane to find a spot. And then from that little spot, I go like 3, 4, 5 hours by speedboat until I find a little spot with those fish, because they live in a very, very small area, you know. You can find them right here, but you tried about 100 meters away from here, we didn't find it. So this is what makes them very expensive, because one person keep a pair of this fish in their home and start breeding them, you know. And he can tell everybody, I'm the only one in Japan, or I'm the only one in USA with this fish, and that's make it very expensive.
Do you think there's a reason to worry that maybe too many fish will be harvested for aquariums for the world?
No. Amazonia, it's so big and nobody knows. There's nobody in the world that knows the Amazonia. Well, everybody knows, I think, tiny little bit, you know. The men who live in the forest, they really know how much they can take from the forest, you know. So it's a natural way to preserve, and this is the way the people do.
Nature should be looked upon as a business.
Yes.
If you go beyond what nature can produce, you're eating the capital and you're going toward bankruptcy.
Right.
Would you agree with that statement?
Completely, completely. I would say that in the past, our people look for the forest like a problem. We have to take off the forest to progress. Now, we change completely that. I think your question goes really for the Indian communities and for the natural people who lives by the forest. Those are waiting for support. They know right now how important they can be for all the challenge that we have in the environment against the relation of nature and the people. 5 years ago, we start to give to the people the idea, concrete idea. If you have this water, why we are going to throw out this water to make here some houses? No, we can keep this water, put some fish here, making this a fishing farm, and let's have some salary for all the people. And in the other place, let's work with the new houses. If you give those ideas for the people, quickly the people understand.
Fish farming relieves pressure on overfishing in the wild, and with impressive results. 1 acre can produce more than 3 tons of fish per year.
Tambaqui, it's a herbivore fish, and tambaqui, it's a very effective species for a fish culture industry. We'll have a feed conversion ratio from the beginning to the end of 1.4. It means that I spent 1.4 kilograms of feed to produce 1 kilogram of fish.
To simulate the reproduction process in the lab requires some finesse, as Alexander forces the release of eggs from the female.
Turning the female back, she will recover very fast. We had a total of 600 grams. It means about 650,000 eggs. We are drying also the male, and then...
Eggs are being fertilized now, eh?
Yes. And then to activate the sperm, we add a little water also. So the sperm will be swimming. And then here the egg will be fertilized and initiate the hydration period.
So now they're going to the incubator.
The incubator mimics the water river current. 12 hours later, the eggs will hatch. After 3 days, when they absorb the yolk sac, we move the larvae to the outside tank, where it will find the rotifers and the zooplankton and the microplankton. So it will be the first feeding of the larvae. In nature, 1%, maybe less, reach mature size. And here we may reach 50 to 60% survival rate.
So you've been a researcher, you've been a scientist, and now you are able to apply your knowledge to become a farmer.
That's right.
The application of science is also at work high in the Amazon treetops to solve another problem, that of climate change. Dr. Philip Fernside of the National Institute of Amazonian Research has spent 30 years here studying long-term changes like those investigated in the LBA project.
Wow. Oh, this is spectacular.
The LBA project is the large-scale atmosphere biosphere experiment. It's a huge project in cooperation with Brazil, the United States through NASA, and the European Union. So there are hundreds of scientists who have been working here for several years, and the main reason for doing this, there are many kinds of research going on, but what really started the whole thing was that right there, which measures the flux, that is the movement of carbon dioxide coming out of the forest and going back into the forest. This is measuring carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You can hear the pump running that's sucking CO2 or the air down through these tubes. And there are 2 different sets of tubes measuring around 402 parts per million by volume, which is more than the global average. The global average is 380 now, and it's gone up from 280 before the Industrial Revolution, and it's still going up. It's going up at faster and faster rate, now about 2.6 parts per million by volume per year. So if you come back next year, there will be more. And of course that is the main cause of global warming. Global warming has taken up most of my time. So I've been studying the emissions from deforestation and various processes also that cause deforestation, highways, dams, and so forth. Dams have tremendous impacts. For one thing, you have to build a road to every dam that's built, unless it happens to have one right there. So you have deforestation from that. You also flood large areas of forest with many dams, such as the Balbina Dam north of Manaus, which is over 3,000 square kilometers of forest.
Brazil has heavily invested in dams, with more than 600 generating about 90% of the country's electricity. But dams depend on rainfall, and half comes from moisture from trees, so ironically, dams reduce rainfall. Since the forest also absorbs carbon dioxide, it actually slows global warming. So while it's not immediately apparent, because dams result in the loss of forests, they are directly implicated as a cause of climate change.
But there are other problems with reservoirs. One of the very easy things to understand is that you stop the migrations of many fish. In river systems like the Amazon, we have many species that migrate long distances to feed or to reproduce. Some of the big catfish, river channel cats, they can migrate up to 4,000 kilometers, and they lay their eggs in the headwaters, and those eggs are just washed downstream, carried by the currents, and those pass through the turbines if you build a dam. So, I mean, that's really what's going to destroy the populations of catfish.
And you also have a contribution of greenhouse gases themselves. It's one of the things I've been working on, that you have methane forming in the bottom of these reservoirs. As leaves and soil carbon and anything that's dead decays, it forms methane.
There was an estimate made in 2000 that 20% or so of the methane, it's a little less than that, that's generated and goes to the atmosphere globally comes from reservoirs. But they were looking mainly at the upstream part. What we've found is that there's a lot of methane that comes out the bottom of the reservoir too, as the water goes through the turbines, because the water in the bottom of reservoirs is supersaturated in methane and also under a lot of pressure. And when it comes out of the turbine, that pressure is released almost immediately, like open up a bottle of Coca-Cola.
And when that methane gets out to the atmosphere, it has a much greater impact on global warming than CO2 does. Using the conversions that were adopted by the Kyoto Protocol, for example, every ton of methane has as much impact on global warming as 21 tons of CO2.
You know very well that the climate change is the worst threat now for the humanity, no? Everyone is saying this. And the Amazon has the power to contribute to the global warming, or the power to restrain the global warming. And it's a kind of the buffer for the global climate, because the size of the Amazon basin is the biggest tropical forest in the world, no?
So there's a direct link between climate and the Amazon.
For sure.
Here we are in the rainy season, and you said this is the lowest amount of rain that you've ever seen here.
Yeah, this year is crazy, absolutely crazy. No one remember one year like this. The Amazon dropping is supposedly the highest level of the Amazon. It's bad news for fishes.
Murph, this is shocking. I can't believe we're seeing so many fish like this along the bank of the small tributary.
Seeing fish in a tree is pretty weird.
What's the explanation?
Well, the scientists at the reserve said that during the last 3 days, the water level has descended 2 meters. And supposedly, the oxygen level in the water went down to the point where everybody died. They just died from lack of oxygen. And of course, the reason is because there's been so little rain. And she said she's been here for 20 years and said that there's never been a situation like this.
To better understand the complexity of change in the Amazon, the team will seek out a connection to the river more than 11,000 feet above sea level in Cusco, Peru, ancient center of the Inca Empire. It's from here that they will travel to the Coricalas Glacier, a glacier under siege whose melting waters contribute to the Amazon.
If you look at the temperature structure in the tropical atmosphere, once you get up to the mid-troposphere to upper troposphere, temperatures are very uniform. And these glaciers are sitting in the mid-troposphere. I look at them as kind of our canaries in the coal mine of the climate system, these tropical glaciers, because they kind of sum up everything that's going on in the system, changes in temperature, precipitation, wind, radiation, and they respond to that. And the fact that they are all retreating, there's not one that's growing in today's climate, they say that this very stable part of the world is changing. This Calcaya ice cap in the southern Andes of Peru was the first tropical glacier ever drilled on Earth back in 1983. And at the time we started that project, we didn't realize it was the largest tropical ice cap on Earth. It's annually layered back to 315 AD. So it provides in this part of the world a history of annual climate, temperature, rainfall, dustiness. This is one continuous record. And those are hard to come by. And that record is disappearing. And in the first 15 years of measurement, it's retreating the terminus at 6 meters per year. By 1991, a lake started to form. You come all the way up to 2006. This lake now covers 84 acres. We took a raft and a sonar to sound it. It's 60 meters and 200 feet deep. And did not exist until 1991. And the rate of retreat in the last 15 years has averaged over 60 meters per year.
10 times as fast.
10 times as fast. And this acceleration is what we're really concerned. Exponential change is taking place. If you look at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, when they look at the projections for temperature rise in the next 100 years, it looks for a 3-degree rise in temperatures globally. You say, okay, when was the last time from the geologic record were temperatures 3 degrees warmer on our planet? And you got to go back 3 million years. You got to go back to the Pliocene. Then if you ask the next question, what was the sea level when temperatures were 3 degrees warmer? They were 25 meters plus or minus 10 meters higher than they are today. And this is the mean projections of all of the best models we have of what's going to be in less than 100 years.
High among these remote mountaintops, the dripping of melting ice is the sounding of an alarm as climate change alters the landscape. It will be a cascading effect that reaches to the river, to the sea, to the world. At present, the projections are indeed foreboding, perhaps overwhelming. But how the story of the Amazon, and with it the world, evolves remains to be written. It's a story of high stakes, as dramatic and far-reaching as the river itself. As the team reaches the end of their journey at Manaus, they cross the merging of the Rio Negro and the Amazon, a sight symbolic of the turbulence between nature and modern humanity witnessed by the team during the 10-month expedition. Blair and Fabian dive the river one last time, finding a message in the cloudy waters. It's difficult to see what lies ahead in the collision here of past and present, of exploitation versus sustainability, of personal and national interests versus the global good. Jean-Michel has found both answers and new questions here, but more importantly, signs for hope. Much has been learned, threats exposed, and the fight for the future of the Amazon and its people is underway. The key will be a united, unyielding stand to protect this critical and life-sustaining force that is the Amazon.
I think the only chance that we can give different answers in the future is if we work together, but really work together, not only in the speech.
This is a global problem, and if there's any hope that we're going to solve this, We've all got to get on the same page. And when everybody's on the same page, human beings are capable of huge accomplishments. But unfortunately, we're not very good at doing anything until it's a crisis. But then when our backs are to the wall, we tend to do the right thing.
We are thinking about now, now, now. We never think about the future. And that's where we need to really focus. What do we want to leave behind us? So today, we're trying to learn more and alert the decision makers, whether in industries or in government, and every individual on this planet on how connected we are to this very, very unique place.
I totally agree that the Earth is not an inheritance from our fathers and grandfathers to us. We borrow the Earth from the unborn. So I believe that just as we defend our own interests, we must defend with the same intensity, or even more so, the interests of those who aren't yet born. The message is this, that we must not repeat in the Amazon the mistakes that were made in many other parts of the world, because the Amazon's existence guarantees the survival of the planet.